Hello, Rav Daniel.
Hi, Avi. Welcome back.
We are back. Very excited.
Yeah. I think that the things that we were exploring last time, I know they've been ruminating in me, and I hope in the people who are joining our conversation.
Yeah.
So what do you come to learn about today?
Yeah. So I've been thinking a lot about our conversation from last week. And I had some questions and I had some things that I wanted to ask you about. I thought that it might be useful, though, to ground the conversation in the psukim, in the verses that you made reference to last week, just so that people, if they want to, they can go back, they can reference them. So does that work?
It definitely does,
Okay.
I think. And what I'm always excited about is when you do that,
What's going to come out? Sure.
Exactly. New things open. It's like a love meeting.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Sure. So just as a quick summary of last time, what I took away from it was that the Torah is at its beginning and the Chumash at its end, it's about Chaim. It's about life. And what you went out of your way to explore with me last time was that when we talk about Chaim, when we talk about life, we're not talking about a life of what is pleasurable to me, what do I want, what will make me feel good. We're not talking about a life that wants to remove itself from pain, wants to remove itself, let's say, from punishment. But instead, we're talking about sort of the essence of life. And we see that at the beginning of the Chumash. And this is where we're going to read a little bit from the 3rd chapter all the way at the end, where it says, Vaygaresh et ha'adam, vayashke mikedem legan eden et hakruvim, ve'et lahat hacherev hamitapechet, lishmor et derech eitz hachayim. And that, I think, is where your insight came from last week, where it doesn't say that it's guarding it, doesn't say that it's protecting it, but it's lishmor et derech eitz hachayim, which is an interesting formulation, which is that it's to protect it so that it doesn't wither away, so that it doesn't become impossible for man to go down that derech.
It's protecting the path.
The path, exactly. Okay, all right. And then at the end of the Chumash,
they are protecting the path.
They are, that's right. And then at the end of the Chumash, what we have, and this is all the way in Devarim, the 30th chapter, is this amazing pasuk that you were talking about last week. Ha'idoti bachem hayom et hashamayim v'et haaretz, hachayim v'hamavet natati lefanecha, habracha v'haklala uvacharta v'chayim, lema'an tichya ata v'zarecha. This choosing of life, and then that next verse, which we're going to hopefully talk about those 3 components that you were talking about. So the entire Chumash is sort of framed as a discussion about life, about Chaim. And what I wanted to ask you as a follow-up from last week, go ahead.
About life and the path towards life.
And the path towards life. Right. Okay. And what I wanted to ask you after our conversation from last week, path of life.
Derech eitz hachayim, the path of the tree of life, or the path of the tree of life.
Okay. So what I wanted to ask you about is, and maybe this is a little bit of a pushback, but I would like to explore it more, is man in this world as it is today, not in the world of Gan Eden, but in our world. Do we have access to understanding what that even means? What Chaim means without it being colored by pleasure, pain, good, bad? Do we have access to what that Chaim is? And specifically what I've been thinking about is almost anything that we can formulate as Chaim, whether it's high-minded, I want a meaningful life, I want even a life of love, connection. Is that not also within like the framework of our world, a world of pleasure and pain, and being able to see Chaim through that? Certainly when people talk about I felt alive, so they talk about it in terms of breaking through boundaries or experiencing things that they've never experienced. Sort of all of these formulations to me seem to be different variations of pleasure, pain, good, bad. What is Chaim? What is life itself? And when we talk about it, what are you making reference to? What are you seeing in your mind that is leading you towards the derech eitz hachayim?
Yeah. beautiful formulation of the question and really touching for me. First of all, to hear you with the passion and the earnestness of the question. This is real. We're not just in some kind of intellection, but I think that in the way you not only are formulating it, but the emotive power behind it reflects the fact that you really are on this quest. And that's really marvelous for me. And it's not, as someone who speaks like a thought-filled language, oftentimes I find myself surrounded by thought-filled people, and that can be very frustrating for me, because what I'm looking for is for people that have the kind of thought that is a life-driven thought, and a thought that then activates their livingness and their lifefulness. And this is actually really what Hashem says to us. I'll get to your question in just a moment, right? But because this is all tied together. But what Hashem actually says to us is, V'yadata hayom v'hashivot el levavecha ki Hashem hu Elokim, that you come to know and you bring it to dwell in your heart. You bring it to dwell in your heart that Hashem is Elokim, which we'll need to explore of its own. But any kind of knowledge which is not life-enhancing, life and love inspiring, will not fulfill that divine desire. That what we come to know in a way that is a reflection of a true quest that we're on for life. So first of all, just appreciating that, Avi. Second of all, that's also to the point. But you asked me, if I heard you correctly, is this something which we can contact in this world? Is it not the case that we, in the way we're created, are always functioning on the pleasure-pain principle, the good-bad principle, which is, in the way I understand that tree, and the way the Rambam explains it, Maimonides explains it, is that it's about what's good for me, bad for me. And then that just leads us down a path of looking for what's going to be good for me and staying away from what's bad for me. Maybe that's just the nature of the way we are, and don't expect anything beyond it. And there's nothing more to get out of this sojourn in this world and in the next world, or some other kind of context of consciousness, perhaps without body, which is so concerned with these things, a knowing which is not centered on getting advantages and dedicated to survival. Maybe it's only going to be there. Maybe it'll only be there. Like, we're fooling ourselves. And Moshe's saying, choose life, is just saying, choose to yearn for life at least, but don't expect to experience any of it. Something like that?
Yeah. And I would just sharpen it a little bit. Like your introduction was saying, it's not an intellectual question. It's when I look inside of myself trying to find it, I have a hard time finding it. Do you see what I'm saying? When I look inside myself and I say, when I yearn for life, and that is something I think that people feel, are they really just masking over or smoothing over, I yearn for a meaningful life, I yearn for an impactful life, meaning that modifier is missing, but it's actually really still there. And so when I look inside myself, I'm trying to find it. So yeah, I think that's, but big picture, I think the way that you said it is right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I hear you simply, explicating a little bit more, like kind of describing, even when I'm feeling even a spiritual pleasure, it's about pleasure. Even when I'm experiencing divine love, ooh, that feels good. I like that kind of a thing that shifts you back and forth. Yeah.
Right. And we've had a conversation that has touched upon this many times, but I do think it's relevant here. Yes.
Thank God I don't remember previous conversations. I guess you do, but that's the Talmud's task. The Rebbe's task is always just to flow with what's coming through.
Yes.
And to be honest, I forget forget the things I say. And I'm very grateful about that because it allows me to rediscover every time. So let me explore this with you because I don't have a pat answer for this. But and I don't want to just case it in the verses, though I do believe the verses actually guide us. But I want to also share with you experience, first of all. There is something of a contact, which is a contact with a life and in its energy, which does not translate, at least not immediately, into, oh, that felt good. That was nice. I'm so happy for this. But there are these moments which can be extended when it's just what it is. And it is life. And it's not the exhilaration of skiing down a hill. It's not even the excitement of a new discovery and understanding a verse in the Torah. It's just an intensity of presence, which feels like something that we do know when, say, your child is just something just beautiful transpired between you and your child, oftentimes a new child, but it can be other ages, and your eyes meet their eyes, and there's just life. And there's the moments before it becomes, ooh, that felt good. Yeah, everything's right. It's okay. All those other things which then become indeed a translation into an intellection, into the world of the dichotomous, good as opposed to bad, pleasurable as opposed to painful, etc. It's just what it is. It's a very, very, what can I say? It's not even alive and exhilarated. It's simply life. And that's the best I can describe. And I can say that I do believe that practices like Shehiyah, which is the Jewish presencing, which literally means pausing in wonder. It's a word which is used in the Torah when Eliezer is just paused in wonder to see whether Rivka is the one. He's just engrossed in it, in the presence of it. And this became a practice, which is called shohim, which is just to pause and wait in wonder. The wondering is not like, oh, I'm wondering what's going to happen, nor is it like, how amazing. It's simply an intense focus of consciousness. And the rabbis say that the ones who would do this were the original Hasidim. That word chesed has a lot to do with life. And the power of chesed is simply this presence in being and life and its life force. And then when you do chesed or act out of chesed, you seek to share that. And they would come into contact with that. So I would, just returning to personal practice, I know that the times that I spent in Shehiyah and spend in Shehiyah put a kind of a simple, unmediated contact with life. And I must say, and it's always been odd to me, but it is a consistent occurrence. I walk in that, or be in that, in a way in which love becomes awakened. Just feeling what is, I believe, described as love, which is a sense of a perfect union with this life in a way in which it's just electrified in that contact. And then if I intellectualize that, so then that will become like, yeah, I'm in contact with life itself. I only want life. And as the Rambam says, when a person acts out of love, that person acts out of the truth of just what is, right? Doing truth because it is true. And there's nothing else there. And when the Rambam says true, he's not talking about an intellectualized truth. He's talking about realness. I'm just being real. I hope this description is useful because it does include a practice and it does include something of a description. And yes, there is, also a feeling of pleasure, which is not illegitimate, but it will go, and I make the practice of not letting it go there too quickly, but it will go to, wow, that was wonderful. Okay, fine. There's nothing negative about that, but it is part of returning to the embodied state in this world in which those become the categories. And for years, Avi, we were learning Rav Daniel and Avi Strasalia, who, for those who don't know, which is about 99.99999% of the Jewish world, let alone the non-Jewish world. Rav Daniel and Avi Strasalia was the primary student of the first teacher of Chabad Chassidut, the Admor Zaken, the Reb Shneur Zalman of Liadi, and wrote a book that we have probably about 200 classes on, up on online. And one of the things which was very much a feature of his teachings was, on the one hand, he was a pneumatic, meaning he was very exhilarated and very much a believer in the exhilaration. And then on the other hand, like seeking a path which would not involve what's called in that language, hergesh atzmi, where I'm just feeling myself. I'm just okay. It's the same thing actually when I'd go water skiing in Miami. Same thing, exhilaration. I'm excited. What difference does it make if it's trances or it's just about excitement? Okay. So you frame it religious. I frame it water skiing. It's the same exhilaration. And I think that's what you're concerned with. It's like, it's just me feeling me more intensely, right? And that is not accurate in the more refined experiences. And I want to say that those refined experiences are things which I do believe when there's one of those moments. There's moments when you have a new baby and that's it. And you look in your wife's eyes and you're done. There's like, you don't have to be saying anything. There's a moment of a kind of an electric presence that I believe has everything to do with this chayim that we're describing. Yeah, I have more to say about it.
That's very beautiful.
Is it, besides being beautiful?
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah. I guess I get.
It's speaking to the point.
I guess I get a little sidetracked when there are examples like a newborn baby involved, because I think that we're looking into your wife's eyes, which I think are all very beautiful experiences, but ultimately seem to me to be also in the Eitz Hadat Tov Vara sort of categories of, pleasure and pain. Although you described the moments before it's turned into that, which I guess that's what we're trying to capture for a moment, even and so I guess with this formulation, and we're certainly not on the second discussion trying to create a whole philosophy of Torah right now, but in this, let's say in this formulation, so the Torah has an aspect of it that is trying to help people keep that in front of them, to bring them down that path. That path is so important because, why is it so important? Meaning something major happened in the Garden of Eden. Humanity shifted.
Oh yeah.
And so we don't have to go. I know that we can speak.
Well, we want to.
Yeah, we could speak about that for a long time. But I guess just in this formulation, that shift that happened, but we still have an eye on the first one, on the derech eitz hachayim, and mitzvot, and all of the experiences of the Jews. That becomes a sort of a way to remember that there is a way back. Big picture, what is...
Big picture, like you struggling so much, as you told me about where you came from, which had so much to do with an enslaved sort of servitude as being the primary theme, right? That kind of servitude. And that when you met me, it like seemed to be a very different frame for what we're doing. It's a frame of love. It's a frame of a kind of a connection to ultimate life, which is really astounding in its breadth and astounding literally, the way I used the word before, mishtaheh, and didn't quite sound the same to you at all. And I want to say, first of all, that we have two names for God that are the most common ones. And actually one of them, which reflects more this simple being and contact with life and compassion in the deepest sense, not as a mercion, but a common passion. That's the name Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey. And there we are the children of Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey. We are the children. And there's Rachmei Av Alabani, a sense of us being part of the continuum of life. And in living living the divine desire, we become cleansed to a point where our consciousness, and we're going to get into this, it's really about consciousness. Our consciousness becomes broadened to experience the being and existence in a way in which, when we come to look at its details, we have great wisdom about them. And that great wisdom is not about gathering information. It's about being in contact with the most intense realities of Havaya, Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey, which is the reflection of the divine beyond space, beyond time, it's the worst way to say it. The Maharal tries to say it as just simple being, and you an extension of simple being. That's called being a child of God, right? And then we have this other name, Aleph Daled Nud Yud Adonai, which means he is my master. And that's where you become the servant of the king, of the master. And in being the servant of the master, indeed, the whole issue is, are you doing what he told you to do or not? And kings have a way of
ensuring
you stay in line. And the very letters of that name of God shift into Dina, Daled, Yud, Nun, Aleph, which is the force, the overwhelming force of rectitude. Okay, the overwhelming force of rectitude, that's what din is. And there you are experiencing yourself as a servant of the king. And we really ride on these two polarities, and they are, in a sense, polarities. Because your father, he wants you to become the very most you could possibly become. Because why does your dad want you to become the very most you could possibly become? Yes, it's partly psychologically speaking, because we all have unfinished business and the child will complete it for us. But there's another aspect of it, and that is that life is so big. Life is so big. I'm devoted to life, and I know that there's so much more to be lived, discovered, and added to life by virtue of the consciousness which my children will open and have. And so I'm in love with life, and so I'm in love with my children and what they may discover. That's a very different orientation, and that's the divine orientation, where God has actually created us as an extension of his being to discover, to explore, to be in love with, in that more primal sense of love, to seek contact with the fullness and the intensity of life itself. And because we are partial creatures and can only see a part of it, this is so exciting to God. It's so exciting to God because these are vantage points on being, vantage points on reality, which, so to speak, he would never access, because there's a being that you bring and a perspective that becomes yours and a part of life which you are, that sees things in a way that is completely new. And this is a very intense theme in the Zohar, but also in the Midrashim, that God just falls in love with innovative insights, which again is not because he had a clever idea and a beautiful vort, a beautiful piece of Torah that he spoke. No, it's because, oh my gosh, he is adding to the treasure house of wisdom and knowing and awareness. And it's just that this is so, imagine a father like that. It was like, I continue to, so to speak, to live through you. Now, in the biological sense, that's not what's happening. But the truth is, in the psychic sense, in the spiritual sense, it is. But we want to keep our audience and not go too far out on a limb. But there's definitely that going on. But let's put that aside and just return to the kind of experience of a parent who's really like that, the way I just described it. And the truth is, the way the verse describes Avraham, it describes him that way. But maybe I'll leave the verses aside for now, but it does say about him, I love Abraham because he's going to tell his children to walk the path of God, Derech Hashem, walk the path of God, so that God will bring upon Abraham everything he promised him. Oh man, that looked awfully selfish, unless you understand that what Abraham is saying is, we are one, and as you become greater, so there's so much more that is added to me, not in a selfish way, but this is part of my devotion to life and its expansion and consciousness and awareness and that glowing reality. So there the mitzvot serve that ever-opening, expansive consciousness in the world of Havaya, of Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey. And that's one side of the story. There's another side of the story, which is, hey man, okay, that was very beautiful, but there's a world here to take care of. There's things that we together are committed to, which is my kingdom, which is the cosmos and creation. And there, I don't really care how much you expand and grow. And basically, I need you to be in the service of what it is that this world is at its very most beautiful expression. And there, you just have to be servant. It's not about whether you grow from this or you become more expansive by virtue of it. And there, if you step out of line, it's not that I'm going to punish you. It's that things are going to start going haywire, man. It's like you start mistreating the environment. And in the Torah teaching, the environment is not just like you're expelling too much carbon dioxide from your cars, or it's also you're expelling too much fumes of hatred or jealousy or wrong action. That also affects the atmosphere, which affects the physical productivity and flourishing of the planet. So it's all one continuum. But there, it's not gonna rain, man. It's not going to rain, okay? It's not going to rain if you're behaving like an animal filled with jealousy and hatred and honor-seeking for yourself and statusing and contest. And okay, so you're part of an ecology which is going to whip right back at you. But there what's going on is you're a servant of something. You're a servant of Adni, of Aleph Daled Nud Yud, and you're a child of Havaya. As God says, Banim atem Lashem Elokecha.
Wow, so we spend our life on these two polarities that seem to be almost impossible to bridge. And I'd like to talk about it more. Yeah. It's easy to talk about them discreetly. Yeah. But I think it's a lived life that encompasses all of that, I think is...
And it does. The whole point of putting man into the Garden of Eden, L'ovdao l'shamra, to do service in it, and to cherish it, is very profoundly a reflection of his beginning point of being in the service of something vast and beautiful and marvelous, which he is a servant to God in that, right? And we have a shared love for this world, which will be a context for that level of you becoming my child. And then when you get there, you'll be eating of the tree of life. That's when you'll be eating of the tree of life. When you get to the expansive contact, the realness of and aliveness of what is ultimately the God who's the living God. And you're participating in that in your very, very particular and specific and individual way and life and perspective. And it's absolutely exquisite then, because then in taking care of the garden and taking the world, you do that with such joy. You do it with such joy because you understand that in creating that exquisite context for what it means to be truly a living creature, they don't stand in contradiction to each other. They are in the service of each other very profoundly. Yeah.
I really enjoyed the term used last time. I think it was Makor HaMa'ayan, that we have, or we are invited to try to at least get to the source of where it all comes from, the source of life. And that to me is an exhilarating image, an exhilarating journey. And I hope that in our conversations, we can explore what that journey looks like in the context of this life full of mitzvot, this life full of obligations and all the things that we have to do and be concerned about, and synthesizing those two. And it seems like this is the similar tension between the Eved and the Ben.
Yes, okay. I don't know if that's an invitation to to rap on it, but I will say that I will say that I will say, and it pains me to say, it pains me that I have to say it. One of those mitzvot is love. Avdut Hashem Elokecha. That's actually the primary mitzvah if you understand Moshe's inviting us to choose life, and the first reflection of that being love. That's a deep thing. So it's unfortunate that mitzvot, and the world of the commandments and the mitzvot has been translated exclusively into activities and not inviting the inner shift, which is also very much part of it. And yeah, it's an extraordinary thing that in the parsha of Ki Tavo, when you come into the land, the whole way the mitzvot are framed becomes transformed. And Moshe Rabbeinu gives us like a whole litany of horrible things that are going to happen to us if what? If we serve God without joy. What? What? Up until now, it's just been, I just got to do the right thing. And in fact, in the parsha called Bechukotai, when you walk in my ways, it looks primarily like you just got to do the right things, right? Here, even if you're doing the right things, but you do it without joy, you're going to lose it. You're going to lose me. You're going to lose me. And the depth of that comes because when one is living in love, so then that love becomes so clearly a path towards this kind of contact with life, that what you do that is aligned with that, awakens that, puts you in touch with that, you don't do because you are obligated, which generally does not lead to joy, but you do because this is the flow of life. This is the flow of life. Ultimately, even the way Moshe describes the covenant with God, it gets there, that there's a union between these, right? Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think we all go through our stages and days and times. And
would you, so just bringing us back to what you started last week and what you just touched on, is that it almost seems like in the derech eitz hada'at tov v'ra, it becomes much harder to touch on that ahavah, to touch on that love, because everything is filtered. Everything comes in as reward and punishment.
Yeah, is it good for me, bad for me?
And then the eitz hachaim is where we find this love of God, which I guess we've been talking for a while, but I just want to point out, you take that seriously. Meaning when growing up, and maybe this is a misinterpretation, but how do you love God, look out into the world and see how great it is? Okay, that's something I can do. But to actually feel a feeling of love towards God, that seems almost too much to ask. And you take that very seriously, love of God. And so that chaim and that love of God are coming together here. This is where you can experience it.
That's what Moshe says. Moshe is our teacher. Remember, Moshe Rabbeinu? He's our teacher. Like, why don't we look at what he's actually saying? Yeah. My God.
Yeah.
He's a fantastic teacher. He's a fantastic teacher if you truly listen to what he's saying. The problem is people get caught into all kinds of formulations, ideologies. Religion gets in the way because it seeks to set up institutions and educational paths and that become, in a way, focused on preserving itself and maintaining itself. And then it's much easier to just keep people in line with punishment, reward and punishment, and the pie in the sky that you'll get if you do all these things, even if you do it without any ounce of enjoyment. And this is all truly perverse, truly perverse, truly perverse.
Wow.
It's useful, perhaps, in maintaining a frame, People aren't going off and doing horrible things, hopefully, although it doesn't seem to work very well. But nevertheless, it doesn't work. It doesn't work because it's anti-life. And yeah, there's a lot of revamping that needs to be done, and it's going on, it's happening. But there's no question that I took this very seriously. Moshe Rabbeinu takes it very seriously. But I will also point out that he waits till the very end of the Chumash to tell us about, and I think we need to be honest about that. This requires a serious level of maturity. I'm not going to ask you how old you are, but you can thank God that somehow you were held in place by the more servant-oriented attitude which you were brought up in and you were taught, and at a certain point became frustrated with, and God set up us to meet and for you to hear something else. And it came at the right time. I don't know if when you were 15 you would have heard it, and I don't know if it would have been healthy for you to hear when you were 15. And Maimonides, the Rambam, actually says this. He says that most people function based on the fear of hurt and the love of pleasure. He says that at the very beginning of the 10th chapter of Tshuva. And then he says, you should just know this is not at all what the level of living that you've been invited to by Avraham is. Avraham, who is Avraham Ohavi. This is not what God has in mind, but it does serve to hold things in place. But I hope that anyone listening to us talking is of the level of maturity to recognize, you need structures and you need bringing people in on a basic level. And everyone who raises children knows that there's at a certain point, you just got to go to sleep. You do need to eat the broccoli. Wait, you're 30 and you realize that you have high cholesterol because you didn't eat broccoli.
And you want to do it.
No, you got to eat the broccoli. I'll give you a really nice dessert if you do. Or in my day, the spinach. But yeah, you want to be like Popeye. So it's like, let's not kid ourselves. We are constructed with a survival orientation, which primarily keeps things moving forward with this ability to just stay alive, which means like nothing much more than what the amoeba does. Bad,
good.
Good. There's food, and there's who you are food to, and you learn the ropes, and that's okay first, and that's actually crucial, and it's also a major part of your brain and a major part of your intellect and a major part of your whole thinking and emotional construction. And great. So don't expect yourself to be touching the things I'm talking about without putting in requisite work, because they are not immediately available to you, because that is not your natural modality. On the other hand, even though they're not immediate, I must say they really are accessible. They really are accessible. And it's like, it makes me cry sometimes I remember teaching a school staff. The Rosh Yeshiva had invited me, a yeshiva staff, and about prayer and this and that. And I had my things that I teach about it. And then I said, let's try something together. And I took out my clarinet, and I just had everyone they were willing to at that point because they trusted me, because they had heard that I know and I'm not just some kind of a flake. And I had them close their eyes and to begin to get in touch with, something like I mentioned last time, and I want this even more, and I don't know why you're looking. And the whole tonality of the room changed, and they shifted. And these are high school teachers. And the Rosh Yeshiva just looked at me with tears in his eyes. He said, I didn't realize that it's just right there.
So accessible.
It is right there. And it is right there because it is our deep nature. It's a challenge to hold that space.
Wow.
But it's our deepest nature, and so therefore it is accessible. But as the Medrash calls it, and the Tanya adopts, it's in a way, it's the long, short path. It's the long, short path, meaning you got to go a long path to get to what's actually the short path.
Right there.
Yeah. It's just right there. It's right next to you, but that doesn't mean getting to it is just like a flip. You actually need to go. It doesn't have to be a terribly long path, but if you want to maintain that way of being in your life, that takes a lot of practice. But there are practices that, like I'm describing, that keep putting you back in touch with that. And so Moshe Rabbeinu indeed says, he says in his eschatology, he says in his vision of the end of time, that when you come back to the land, God is going to circumcise your heart to love. That's literally what he says. So, yes, that sounds like I can't fully love in this state, and that's true. You can't. But I can, on the other hand, choose life. In choosing life, I can direct myself towards that. And yes, you do get tastes of it that become real or more real and less interposed with intellect, etc. But nevertheless, the maintaining of that as being your way of being, that level seems to be something which belongs to a time when all of humanity will have arrived there, when the cosmos will have shifted into that being the state of being. It's not something, it seems, that an individual can have to be in and maintain in its most pristine state as long as we are in this world. We're so ecologically intertwined with each other that ultimately you're still living in a world where instead of reading Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey the way it's written, we read it as Adonai. We read it as the one who is our master.
Dino.
I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So,
although the rabbis say in the end of time, we will say it as it's written.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Because Vaya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz payam hahu,
yeah.
Yihye Adonai echad ushmo echad. God, Yud Hey Vav Hey, will have only one name. We'll have only one name. And then what we're all dreaming of will be. But we are invited to that. We're on the derech Eitz HaChaim.
What I so love about this, there's a few things, but the first one is that it's not that experiencing Chaim is the end goal. It's actually, there is work to be done there as well. There is something to be had there as well. We have work to do there as well. And if I'm understanding you correctly, true love of God, and with everything that means, comes when all of these other things fall away. All of the tov v'ra falls away, and we have Chaim. From Chaim comes the love. And so it's almost like that's where everything begins, really. That's the way that you quoted the Rambam. That's what life is meant to be. That's where you're supposed to live, hopefully, a lot of your life in that place.
Yeah,
so.
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
Yes, you are. And that is so important, what you're pointing out. It brings us back to the question you asked in the last time we were talking. Can you delineate what this being in life is? And I said, Moshe Rabbeinu already did that for us. And indeed, the end point is no question, the end point is love. And we need to talk about that. But the end point is love and being able to truly hear his voice. I wish we could really just appreciate what that means to have him whispering in your ear and to be in intimacy with him. And the rabbis brilliantly, like they tell us, there are the three things that are going to take you out of this world. They say they're jealousy, kin'ah, ta'avah, lusting, and kavod, and honor seeking. And these are actually the C's of these three expressions of life. They are. They're just like, look at how just brilliant it is. The opposite of love is jealousy. And this Nachmanides, the Ramban, says beautifully. He says, when you love someone, it says in the Torah you should love your fellow as yourself. And then the Ramban says, what does that mean? Halachically speaking, in terms of Jewish law, it doesn't come out that way. Chayecha v'chayei chavercha chayecha kodmi. You're not expected to have the same love for yourself as for another. By the way, how much Jewish teaching believes in loving yourself. So he says, this is how it will look. What it will look like is when you desire good for another, you will desire that good to be the most possible living out of his wealth, wisdom, courage, goodness as possible, as opposed to someone who, I bless you, should be rich, but in my heart I'm thinking, just not richer than me. You should be wise, just not wiser than me. He says...
That's the kinna.
That's kinna. That is kinna. That is, I am afraid that you will, in becoming a full expression of who you are meant to be, I am afraid that will
detract from who I am.
Detract from who I am and the way my accomplishments look. But listen to this. To truly want for the other as much as you want for yourself means that your devotion is to life, really. It's like, I just desire life to fully flourish. My life, your life itself, right? And then there's no jealousy. Clearly, my flourishing doesn't take away from yours, nor yours from mine. That is such a dichotomized way of looking at things, as if in your flourishing, you're somehow casting a shadow on me and my accomplishments, right? So clearly, that kind of a orientation is, in this, an antithesis to love. This is the deep meaning of ahavah having the same numerical value as echad. They both have the numerical value of 13. So people often say, yeah, because love is to be at one with the other. I'm not sure about that. We really need to explore love in depth. But what I can say is when you experience life as one, then it becomes automatic that you love every expression of life, because what you love is life. What you are in is life. And when you're in life, then you love it, right? So the opposite is kin'ah. So the first way we can identify I'm not there is when you feel jealousy towards someone, oh, I've fallen away. The second is ta'avah, which is lusting, appetite for taking for yourself and your own pleasures, right? And your own feeling of exhilaration. The last thing you want to do when that's what you're looking for is to listen to the other person. The last thing you want to do is to listen to them. You don't want to know their world. You want to subsume their world in yours. You want to take it over. You want to rape them on whatever level you're going to rape them, whether it be raping their mind and then feeling great because you've raped their mind, raping their money, raping their bodies. It's all driven by ta'avah, which is completely an orientation of my seeking to aggrandize, to enlarge myself, my experience of life, my exhilaration with it, etc. That is the antithesis to the listening. And then the antithesis to the intimacy is definitely kavod, is like kavod in the sense of I have more weight than you. I am more dignified, have more honor than you, right? That is one of the most profound blocks to our being able to experience intimacy, because it doesn't allow me just to be here with you, to enjoy you, to really intertwine with you, because I'm caught up with who's higher, who's lower, who's got the greater importance, who's of higher status, right?
There can never be any sort of meeting when one of them is holding themselves above the other, or yeah.
And the Rambam says amazingly at the end of his halachot about Sukkot, he says that will be your primary block to joy. If you're cholek kavod le'atzmacha, and we will need to explore this as
I'd love to read that
all
inside.
These topics.
Yeah.
Joy, pleasure, joy and pleasure we need to explore on their own. But intimacy, which is very much, intimacy really has more to do with pleasure than it does with joy, but nevertheless, that kind of intimate pleasure is blocked by you block yourself. You're not willing for the person to see you for what you are, because when he will truly see you for what you are, he will discover that you're simply another perspective on life. You're not the final word. You're not the end game. And therefore, you don't have any more dignity or honor than he does. So when you become an honor seeker, you'll never want to truly allow yourself to be met. So you see how amazing a Mishnah this is. So there are three things which take Adam, a human being. And the Maharal says those are the three things which took the first Adam, the first man, out of this world. This world being all the things we've been describing about what this world is really meant to be and will become, right? And which we are on the path towards. But the three things which will take you out of it is actually like a manual. Well, watch yourself. If you feel yourself having jealousy, you've fallen out of the oneness, which is contact with what's real and the desire for all of life to become expressed, which is called love. If you feel yourself just like lusting after what to take this person as a mode for your exhilaration, right? Then you're not gonna listen, right? You're not gonna listen. You don't want them to be truly an individual of separate realness to whom you listen and seek to come to understand. And if you are involved in, concerns about your status, so man, forget about intimacy.
What I love about this is that there's the level of, let's say, tikkun hamidot, right? That you want to have good character traits and you want to stay away from bad character traits, and we all do. And you could look at all of those three things in that context. But there's this other level, I think, that you're pointing to, which is that there's a certain consciousness. There's a place where a person should be trying to live in his mind, what he's experiencing in life. And just know that if your red flags are one of these three, and if you've experienced one of these three, that means you've moved away from the consciousness. Not that, oh, now I need to go fix my kina, now I need to go fix my taiva, but what do you need to do to bring yourself back to that much sort of elevated level of consciousness?
Yeah,
which is
and I'm really excited, and in a way this kind of brings our conversation around, because I'm really excited that what you're doing now is you're saying that these aren't actually antithetical modalities, the ethical path of being someone who is not jealous and who's to be a righteous human being, which definitely has more to do with the world of being a servant of higher purposes and living the meaningful life and living the righteous life. That's true, and you won't be a evil person if you live those, but you will be a partial person. You will be a partial person because but just this, it's the same thing. It's not like there's other things to do here. It's the same thing, but they become, as you put it so beautifully, reflections of the state of consciousness you're in and the connection to the realness, which ultimately is the realness of being, the realness of the divine, the realness of what life is. And these will be red flags. They will be things that are going to pollute you and get in the way.
Or on the flip side, the things that are going to help you along the way.
They are, and they really are, because when you have a demarcation like that, I'm feeling jealous about that guy. I'm feeling jealous about that singer. I'm feeling jealous about what he just said, or whatever it will be, and then about his life, or his parents, or his kids, and then wait a minute, what's going on? And thank God, thanks to this conversation and our exploring this, you have to work on. And it's not just, I just got to overcome that. I just stopped.
Yeah.
No, it's not about subjugating your bad passions. It's about aligning yourself with a higher vision and a higher consciousness.
What I'm hearing and really enjoying about all of this is that what we're saying is that perspective of servant to king, or this is just what you got to do to keep this world going, that's important. Those are the basics, and you got to get there. And what we've started to explore is what do those next steps look like? Sort of the path from avdut to ahavah. What is that? What is the derech et hachayim? What does the derech et hachayim look like? And it sounds to me like that's really what we've started to touch on over here. So I'm very excited.
Okay, me too. And yeah, bon voyage.